firstly, welcome Juhi to BGS.
Thank you so much. It's a complete pleasure to be here and to be chatting with you.
Yeah, it's great to meet you in person. I've already told you this when I met you earlier, but I did grow up watching you, and it's very weird, growing up watching somebody on TV and then as an adult meeting them.
Right.
And I'm glad that you're not like horrible.
Well, we'll see how this goes along, and then you be the judge of whether I've been horrible or not. But I haven't heard what you've said to me in a while. Ever since I've been in London, I've done something completely different for the last 12, 13 years. I quit television in 2012 or 13, I think. So it's been a minute since I actually sat across somebody and chatted about my TV career.
Does it feel like you've kind of taken a step back into your younger days when you were VJing now, sitting in front of a camera?
A little bit, yeah. Although I used to have your position. It was always me interviewing people. So it's a bit of a swap, and I think I'm enjoying it.
Oh, I love
the
that.
first few minutes already. Yeah.
Tables have turned. Yeah. So Juhi, tell me maybe a little bit about yourself for people who might not know who you are.
Okay. My name is Juhi Pande, and I run a home and lifestyle brand called Skunk Superstore, which focuses on everyday products. I live and work in Hackney, and I have for the last, 12 years. Prior to that, I lived in Bombay. I studied there for a while, and a chunk of the time was spent working in television. I was a TV host. I also did some writing towards the end of my TV career. And that was the long and short of it. So Bombay was home, and my whole universe sort of centered around Bandra and Bombay. Yeah.
And how did you actually fall into a career in VJing?
So it's a funny story. I was about 24 years old. It was a series of circumstances. I never thought I'd work in television. I had no aspiration whatsoever. I was working for a model management firm, and some of our models were participating in a reality show with a channel called Channel V, and I was asked to go and make sure that everything's all right at the shoot. I happened to meet a friend of mine who was a VJ. She was a video jockey, and I was chatting with her over lunch when somebody came and spoke to me and said, "Oh, you talk a lot. You seem to talk a lot." I don't think I was offended because it was said quite nicely. And it, you should call us. And gave me a little card. I didn't really care about it. I was flattered internally, obviously, but I didn't really care about it. And then I got chatting with this person who ran Channel V. He was the creative head. His name was Amar Deb. And I had the job, and I was overwhelmed with what he said. I thought it was really, really kind and really sweet and all of that. But obviously, I didn't entertain the thought. I was terribly shy in front of the camera. I'd never been in front of any camera. Anyway, I quit about a year later, or like 6 or 7 months later, and I went traveling. I came back, and I got a text saying, "I believe you've quit your job. Would you like to come in and have a chat?" So I was out of a job. I was running out of money, and I was like, you know what? I'll go have a chat. And I had a chat, and they said, we have two positions. One is of a TV presenter, and the other is music and artist relations. And you get to work with Luke Kenny. Luke Kenny was my god. He was an ex-VJ, but he ran the music and artist relations section of Channel V. And I was quite excited about working under him. They had me come in on a Sunday and chat with a producer called Richard Mascarenas, who just asked me all sorts of questions, what I like to do, what I've been doing, so on and so forth. He said, why do you want to be on television? And I said, I don't at all. He said, what if I told you this camera was on? And there was a tiny handycam just behind him, which had been recording all this while. And I got terrified, and I turned my chair around. And that was my audition. That was it.
Wow.
The chat that I had with him. And I had immediately after that, they had a 5-year contract ready for me. So as long as I knew there was no camera on me, I was fine. But the moment I knew that there was something focusing on me, I would just freeze and unable to perform. So it happened by chance. And I think they saw that I was quite comfortable chatting with people, chatting generally. I just had to break that barrier that I had when I saw a camera. And I worked on that for the next year pretty hard. So, yeah, so that's how it happened.
Wow, that sounds like it was very much just chance.
It was chance, and it really changed my life. It changed who I was because it made me so much more comfortable with me and gave me a lot more confidence. And I think those two facets can really enhance somebody's personality, and it made me go through life with a lighter step, I would say. Yeah.
I think to take a slight step back, it would be great for you to actually explain what a VJ is or does, because I don't think they exist anymore.
No, it's prehistoric. It's when music television existed. A VJ was a video jockey, somebody who came on your screen and introduced music to you. And then it morphed into other things like travel shows and concerts and interviews and all sorts of things that centered around music television in the noughties. So there was the late 90s and noughties. So there was MTV and then there was Channel V. This is what we had in India. And that's what we did. So there was about 7, 8 of us at any given point of time. We worked together, we worked alone, we had studios, we worked outside, we did a lot of vox pops, we went and interviewed people on the street. It was all fun and bubbly and interesting, and we were made to run wild, and we worked with really interesting producers. So essentially, it was presenting music or music adjacent programming to people. Yeah.
And how did you come up with concepts for what you wanted to discuss on air? Like, did you have creative license in deciding what the shows would be about, etc.? Did you come up with those pitches, or were they kind of given to you and you ran with them?
So the structure was really quite interesting. We had producers who came up with show ideas, and then the show ideas, if they were approved, would then be assigned certain presenters.
Right.
And then you'd work with the presenters. But essentially, we'd work alongside a scriptwriter if we needed a scriptwriter. We did a lot of travel shows, in which case it was solely based on what, not just what we wanted to do, but say we went to Ladakh, right, which is one of the most magical places on the planet. Everything was on the fly. We could only have a very loose structure.
Yeah.
So it was incumbent upon us to navigate that landscape. But we had a producer, and the producer called the shots. So we worked in conjunction with them, but essentially there was a broad outline of what the show entailed, and then we just go with it. So it wasn't very scripted for the first few years. In fact, scripts were just suggestions, just ideas thrown at you. So it was us being us, and really doing the. How do I say this? It really depended. Like if it was an interview, then it was quite defined. But otherwise, it was just rolling with what we had. Yeah.
Do you think you thrived in that kind of uncertainty of like what's going to happen when the camera rolls?
Not for the first year. I think the first year I spent just in deep terror. I was mortified. I didn't know how to be around a camera or people behind the camera. I was terrified of them. I was terrified of the camera. And I think I struggled a lot the first year. But I did so many shows and so many formats of shows. So I did live shows and I did interviews and I did studio shows and I wore ridiculous costumes and large hats and was, tried to be funny, I had to find my own space. Prior to that, I'd never even done makeup. So I didn't like myself when I did. So there were all these things that sort of had to be worked on for the first year. And I think when I got confident about a year and a half into television, that's when the fun started. Like that's when it became really interesting. You walked into set or you went for a road trip and it was just fun. We worked with very interesting people, all our producers, the production unit, just fun. I think the first 4 or 5 years were electric. Yeah.
Do you have any specific memories from those times? Like any places you'd travel to or people you'd worked with that really stuck with you, or you still kind of think about?
Yeah, there were a couple of instances. I did a daily show called The Basement, and I did that with Neel, who's a dear friend of mine.
He was in for more shots as well.
Yeah, yeah, he's so great. He and I worked together for a few years before he quit and wanted to focus on theatre and acting. I did Basement with Neel and our producer Cyril Diabrio. I would like to say that was the highlight of my television career. We used to walk in and shoot 4 or 5 episodes in one day.
Whoa.
And the sort of stuff we did was ridiculous. We had 3 cameras on us, all moving. Some theme would be spat at us, and we'd just go with it. And Neel and I worked so well together. He was my work husband. We just got along so well. We knew what the other person was thinking, and I think we did 300, 400 episodes or something like that. It was crazy. We just churned it out. Maybe more. I don't know. I would like to. That was the highlight. We had a great set, and we did some ridiculous stuff. I don't think I can speak about it. But, there were some ridiculous incidents where my producer's taking his shirt off and the camera's panned to him, and we didn't edit any of that out, and we just go with it. It was really fun. We interviewed some incredible people. At the peak of it, I think there was this Rakhi Sawant. We had Rakhi Sawant come into the studio, and that was a great episode. We also had Himesh Reshamya.
Oh my gosh. He's an icon these days.
Yeah, I mean, he was an icon. He
Still
started
an icon.
off being an icon.
Yeah.
And we'd have so much fun with the whole format. So that was one. The other was a travel show I did called Freedom Express, where we would get ₹1,00,000, which is £1,000, for 25 days for 8 people to travel to a certain part, like a certain direction in the country, and do 7 or 8 short videos on a certain theme. And it had to revolve around the independence in India for 15th August. And I remember going to Ladakh and being in a van with 7 other people, all our camera equipment, all our clothes, everything, driving from Delhi to Leh, which is far. It's a 3.5-day journey.
Wow.
And shooting content there and not knowing what we'll shoot, having just a vague idea. That was an incredible trip. I did that with my producer. Her name is Sakshi Khanna, and I can recall every moment of it so clearly. So it was phenomenal. We met a biker gang from all over the world. They were called the Shiva Raiders, and they worship Lord Shiva. And the bikes were all kitted out, and they would go down the hill. Like, there was this crazy guy. He'd stand on his motorbike while going down a mountain which had no barricades. We filmed that. Like, it was ridiculous, the sort of people we met.
Yeah.
And they'd just been traveling all around India and doing whatever they needed to do, and knitting or making tea and selling that. It was incredible, yeah.
Kind of sounds like the definition of candid. Like, I feel like you didn't have planned any of that.
I mean,
you're just living.
You have no idea who you're going to meet, and you meet them and you ask them if they want to be a part of a small TV show, and they say yes, and then you just go with that. So I think I like that format the most, yeah.
Did you ever realize, like, the impact your work was actually having? I watched you in Barcelona growing up, which is wild. Like, I didn't have MTV, but I had Channel V. So I watched you guys all the time. It must be so almost weird to think that there's desis, like, all over the world who know you, like, so in detail as well. They're probably watching you, like, every day.
Yeah, I when you said that to me, it made me all warm and fuzzy. Because gosh, I didn't know that we were reaching the diaspora. I don't think we really focused on any of that. I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I would walk into a college and college kids would know me, and that was fine because I was doing all these shows in and around all these colleges. It was very youth centric, so I just assumed that was how it was, but it was centered around colleges in Bombay, Delhi, Chennai. So I don't think we gave it too much thought. Yeah, we didn't. I don't think I impacted that many people, although I did shave half my head once and got a
You
mullet.
did.
Yeah. And I remember I walked into a college and there were a few girls who'd done that.
Oh, wow.
And I found that so cool because I regretted that hairstyle a week after I got it
Really?
done. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you never looked like you regretted it.
No,
on
only because
TV.
it started to grow out, and I was just like, "This is rubbish. Like, what am I going to do with?" And I had to go to Australia for a shoot, and I think the regrets set in then. But it was short lived. But yeah, I think when I got that haircut and I walked into, I forget which college, it was in Bombay, and there were a few girls who had that hair, and it was exactly like mine. I was just like, "That's cool."
Yeah.
You know.
You were the
Nice.
OG influencer.
Gosh, when you say it like that, I don't know how I feel about it, but yeah, a little bit.
Actually, I'm very curious to hear from you whether you still talk to your kind of colleagues from back in the days about all of this stuff and just think, what is happening in society these days?
Yeah, I'm still friends with a lot of my Channel V producers.
Yeah.
And two of them are really good friends of mine. And yes, like old aunties, we sit and discuss, oh, look at the state of things, back in the day and so on and so forth. We do have those chats often. But my peers are not so much on this subject, but I'm still in touch with Neel, with Anu Menon, who was Lola Kutty.
Yes, loved her.
She's phenomenal. And because of social media, I'm sort of in touch with Archana, Vijaya, Pia Trivedi. We all got along really well, and we worked together on quite a few projects. And so there's a lot of camaraderie. It was always us being friends and working from that. Yeah, I think with my friends Divya and Aarti, who used to be my producers, we end up talking a lot about the sort of formats we did and, what works now. They still work in similar industries. Their opinions are similar to mine, where we don't know how it's going to pan out, but this doesn't seem all right. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't feel like this is it.
Yeah.
So it's got to move on from here. Yeah. I think that's the general consensus of the people around me.
Before we move on to, I guess, your life in London, I think listeners will probably love to hear the fact that, because everyone loves him now, Aditya Roy Kapoor, who's now so famous. He was also a Channel V VJ.
He was so young. There were 5 girls. So there was Archana Pia, me, Sarah Jane, and Tina Thadani. And was Neel working around? I think Neel was working. I'm not sure. So we were the girls, and then they hired AD, and he was 17. He was so young,
So young,
and he was so beautiful. He's always been beautiful with his
big afro on his
hair.
head.
Yeah, gosh. And we were all. I remember he'd just been hired, and we were all shooting on a beach in Goa. They used to do these calendars called Girls on V, and we had all the hair and makeup. We all looked so glamorous and just hot. And half the time I couldn't believe what I was saying. And, we shot everything on film. And Sheetal Sudhir, who was the creative head, she was the promo head of Channel V at that point of time. She's just a genius. I'll say this out loud because Sheetal might watch this. And she's one of my closest friends. She was my maid of honor when I got married. So she directed the whole thing. And it was all just beautifully done. So they shot all of us, and then they got AD, and they were like, "Okay, run from here to there in slow motion." Obviously, they just shot, and then take your shirt off. And we were all sitting behind on this rock, and we were like, "Do it again, do it again." It was really fun. He's very sweet. I haven't seen him in ages. Gosh, I left Bombay 2012. Yeah, somewhere around that time. And he was already working in films by then. He's a great guy. He's really sweet. He's very well spoken, very polite, just sweet.
When I was doing research before I was going to meet you, I mean, there isn't really a lot on the internet from, those shows and episodes that you've done.
Isn't that great?
It's lovely.
Isn't that
It must
great?
be lovely for you, not for me as a host.
There's no digital trail whatsoever. There's a few things here and there. But if I have to find stuff, I have to see, if I've got anything saved on my computer. I have a few promos, but none of my shows 500 episodes of Basement or whatever it is, none of the interviews, there's nothing online. And I think that's grand. I think it's a relief. There's no scrutiny,
That's true.
I like that. I don't think there's any downside to it because now everything is available online. So I think it's great.
Yeah, what a luxury to not be under that
Right?
scrutiny, having been in the media.
Having been in the media, I don't know if I would survive that. I don't know if I'd survive the constant criticism that comes with being online now, or being a person of interest, or being a person in the public eye now. I have no idea what that's like because by the time I quit is when social media was really taking off. So I don't know how I would deal with that, but I know myself, and I know that it would be quite intense to take that constant onslaught of criticism where everybody has an opinion, as they should. It wouldn't work for me.
Yeah. Was it a conscious decision when you quit that you kind of wanted to step away from that public eye? And because obviously your like Instagram isn't very public and things like that. So was that a very intentional thing that you were like, right, I've done that now, I'm moving on, I'm changing path?
Yes, it really was quite intentional. The thing is, I started working in television when I was 24.
Yeah.
So I was very young. And I really enjoyed the curve that TV took at that point of time. I did some very interesting shows. I worked with very interesting people. But I always knew it was short-lived. I never pursued it. It happened to me by chance, just pure luck. And people around me seeing that I had some potential and working on it. And so at no point did I think that, once this is over, I will move on to this other version of television. I already had the best job in the world at that point of time. For a young person to work in music television, meeting people from all around the world, doing travel shows and hosting and whatnot, it was so exciting. So I knew at some point it would come to an end. When my contract with Channel V got over, just before that, I was doing some other shows with NDTV and Times Now, and I was lucky enough to work with very interesting people. But it was not the same, and I was already a little bit jaded because it was going into reality TV, it was going into lifestyle-centered programs, which were fine, but they weren't that much fun for me. And so I really did sort of drag my feet towards the end because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was writing, and so it was giving me some idea of where I wanted to head towards. But I knew that TV was always going to be short-lived for me. And so when I quit, I quit. Yeah. And I didn't want to have any sort of online presence. I had a ridiculous Twitter handle where I it was stream of consciousness sort of, and I quit Twitter as well. So no, I didn't care about the followers or wanting to continue in that capacity at all. So it was a conscious decision. Not only did I quit, I moved countries. And that was on the coattails of that, because it would be a clean cut. And I wouldn't have any draw, nothing would draw me back to it. Because if I was still in Bombay and I got a show and it seemed sort of interesting, I'd keep doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be in that scenario. So yeah, I quit.
And why London?
So London, because I was, my boyfriend at that time, who's now my husband, was studying here, and he'd lived in Bombay for 4 years. We started dating when he moved here, and he was studying at LSE, and I figured, he got a job, and he said, well, I'll work here for a year, and then I'll come back to Bombay. And I remember saying, why don't you stick it out a little bit longer, let me come there, maybe we'll give it a year, and then we'll see, and then we can come back to Bombay. And that was 2012. Wow. And I just didn't go back. I just sort of... So London draws you, and we both kind of liked it here. We both sort of liked it here. And we got busy with work. And that was the end of that. it's a great place for us to be. And my family's in Bombay, his family's in Boston, so it's halfway for both our families. And we just made it home, and it's home now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why London. It just again, he was here, and I was like, maybe a year will be fun, and it's many years since.
How does one cope with changing kind of what they're used to in terms of the weather in India and Mumbai versus London?
God, I am so glad you've given me a platform to speak about this. It's so hard. I'm a tropical girl, and so for me, I will say this, and this will make me sound very spoiled. I don't spend a chunk of December or January in London. I run away. Before I had my daughter, all of December and January was in Bombay or Goa. So I'm very spoiled that in that regard. But now, as she's getting older, we have to spend more time because of school. It isn't great. I think it takes a lot of getting used to. And one way of coping with it is whining about it constantly. That seems to do it for me.
Yeah.
And if I find other people who are whining about it, it makes me feel like there are other people suffering, and it just lets me power through January and February. It's really as lame as that.
Yeah.
There's no getting used to it. It's just I want some sun on me all the time, and that's not really an option till you hit June. So
You found a way to basically have both, right?
yes, yeah, a little bit. If I can get some sunshine in December, I'm happy. I'm like a plant.
So am I,
Yeah.
honestly. I've realized that's the only thing that works for me as well,
Yeah.
is getting away, recharging my
Yeah.
batteries through the
Yeah.
sun and then coming back.
And I'm envious because you're leaving tomorrow and you're going to all the sunshiny places that you can.
Yeah. That was part of the reason, to be honest. I was just like, I'm not feeling creatively motivated in
Yeah.
London anymore.
Yeah.
Do you ever have moments like that where you're just like, it's so bleak, like what am I even doing, and like spiraling?
Yeah, I mean, there are some moments. There are some days where you're just like, oh, it's a lot. The flat grey can get to you, but I really like what I do, and I think that keeps me going. And also, just life is really busy. It's just the three of us at home, but as my daughter grows up, she's got all these activities, and I have to pick her up at a certain time, and there's all this stuff to do. So life is quite busy, and in a good way. So that really works for me. And I've realized that in order to get work done with what I'm doing right now, I have to work every day, whether I like it or not. And the moment you're in it, the moment you're sort of grinding, it seems to work for me. Yeah.
How has motherhood actually changed your perspective on life and work? Because you would have gone from having a really kind of like, let's just pack a bag, go somewhere life, to now being like, okay, there's a little human now, and I need to center myself around her. So how has that mentally changed for you?
Motherhood changed me completely. It changed everything about me. I had a projected image of who I would be. I've always been very hardworking, very career driven, lots of ideas, and able to work 16, 17 hours a day, no problem. Weekends, holidays, that's just who I have been my whole life. And I had my daughter when I was turning 39. So that was a chunk of my life that I'd spent working a certain way. And so I just thought that, I'll have a baby, I'll have some help, and I'll continue as is. And I think when I held her for the first time, just as she was born, my brain just flipped. Everything I felt, it was so strong, and I sort of, in that moment, knew that she's primary, like she's the most important thing in my life. And it wasn't just these words, it was a visceral feeling. And I led with it. So it was completely, gut instinct. I went with that. So there were no books that I read or anything. But having understood that, there was so much conflict because I was supposed to be this other person in my head, where I just get back to work in a month and life is going to be fine. And, I didn't want anyone around her. I wanted to take care of her. She was my child. I felt all these strong emotions. So the first year I struggled quite a bit because babies need all your time.
Yeah.
And if I didn't want any external help, then I was going to have to do all of that with my partner, with my husband. And it was so confusing for me. But I think a year and a half into it, I'd made my peace with it.
Yeah.
And I'd given her priority that this is the person. Like this is my number one thing.
Yeah.
And everything falls under it. So I think the first few months work suffered a bit, but the team I was working with was brilliant. Janicia and Shivani, they were wonderful, and they covered for me. And then the next year, the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow.
So I was all in. Like, it was, my daughter's name is Skanda. So Skanda was my focus. And as they get older, things get easier. She's 6.5. She's in year 2. I have so much more time. I'm able to focus so much on work. So it is a phase. She is still number one, no matter what. But she's getting her own life already. She's doing all these wonderful classes, and she loves school. And she's this brilliant, funny, amazing kid who is so loved. And she is our focus. And so I think giving her that base allows us to have this time now where she's in school, we work. It's quite demarcated, and it's quite comfortable now. But the first couple of years were a little difficult. Just having her changed my entire perspective on life, and I'm so grateful for it.
Would you recommend having kids?
100%. My God, it is, having a child is. How do you? I don't know how to use words to explain that feeling. I was not maternal till I held my daughter.
Yeah.
And it is the most exquisite feeling to have a child and to love in that manner. That love is unlike anything you've ever experienced before. So 100% recommend. Yeah.
Of course, considering that everyone's got different abilities and circumstances, right,
Yes,
in terms of what's possible for them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think it was more like a selfish question because I'm also not very maternal.
No.
So I'm at that phase where I'm like, oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think there are some people who feel very strongly about it. Like there are people who don't want to have children, and there are people who want to have children, and the people who want to have children pursue their career with that same fervor that they did before, and they're able to do that. There is no right or wrong. It is such a personal choice. I was surprised by how I reacted to it.
Yeah,
And
I love hearing it.
Yeah, I the way I recommend it, I didn't think I'd be speaking like this about having children or, going through the whole it's such a personal, informed choice that there is no right or wrong, and especially for women, because you have to carry the child if you are carrying the child, and balancing work and home and child. It's so much. So however you want to do it is the right way. Is my opinion.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to talk a little bit about your businesses that you've run in London, because yes, you have run businesses. So when you moved to London, you started a publication, an online publication talking about cities and big cities. I'm a big city girl, and I did come across the City Story, which is what it was called. And I loved that there was a storytelling aspect to it, because I think in some ways, everything you've done in your career is almost like, in a way, like, I don't know if it's fair to say, but ahead of its time. Like,
that's so,
because I think we're now talking about like, nuance and storytelling and like speaking to like maybe more
hyperlocal.
Hyperlocal. That's a great word. Stories and, telling those rather than being really surface level or kind of extreme about things. So tell me a little bit about like the thought process behind that.
Right. So the City Story launched in 2016. It was a venture between my best friend and I. My best friend's name was Shamal Bujani. I'd known him since I was 18 years old. He ran a magazine called Record Music Magazine for years and years in Bombay, which focused on music. So he had the background of running a music-centered publication. I had been writing for a few years. I had written for various publications in Bombay. I'd done a few writing courses when I initially moved to London, just to fine-tune what I was doing, what I wanted to do. And I had this idea. It was quite selfish because I just moved. I didn't want to cut the umbilical cord between Bombay and me. And I had this idea, what if we got local writers to write about their neighborhoods, things they did, ate, experienced, and write it in not long form, but also not, bite size. So short stories on their neighborhood, published with a few photographs, pinned to a map of the city, right? And this was the initial idea that Shamal and I came up with. And I knew Shivani Shah from ages before. She was Shamal's friend and she'd worked with him. She was an ex-lawyer. And this wonderful woman called Janissia Alves, who I stalked on Twitter. And I forced her to meet me. And I sat her down and I was just like, I'm doing this. You write so well. It makes my teeth grind. Like, you're such a good writer. She's so good. Please, will you work with me? And she said, sure. She had 3 kids at that point in time. And she's like, I have little time, I'm busy, but I will commit to this. So the 4 of us started the City Story. Shivani is a logistical god, a phenomenal editor, and she cracked the whip. So she handled everything. Shamal was going to run the business side of it. I was going to be in charge of the content and write a little bit myself. And the idea was to focus on initially Bombay and London, get local writers, have them write these wonderful stories and pin it on a map for everybody to use, right? The business plan, we worked backwards. The business plan would come to light later on. And 3 months into the launch, my best friend died. Shamal very suddenly passed away. And I didn't know what to do. I was in Bombay at that time. He had a heart attack and he just died one day to the other. And this was somebody who'd seen my whole adult life. I met him when I was 18. He passed away when I was 36. And I didn't know what hit me because I lost a lot. Like I couldn't process that he passed away. And I didn't know whether to continue with the City Story because it was, at that point, the least of my problems. And yet this thing that we were building from the ground up. And I spoke to, my other partners, Shivani and Janissia, and my parents and my friends, and they said, let's take a little break and then let's just continue. Let's just see what we can do with it because it would be a pity not to carry it forward. I was in Bombay. I came back to London. I think I was in shock for a whole year, not knowing how to process his loss, but also like trying to work on something that I wanted to build with him. So it was very confusing. And I didn't know how to run a business at all. I'd never done anything remotely close to it. So we just focused on content. And we focused on working with really amazing writers. And we rolled with it. And it turned into what it was, which was this exciting platform for stories. And we worked with wonderful writers in both cities. And we ran that for 6 years. And towards the end of the 4th year, we started to make sense of it, what it was going to be. We started to work with travel websites. We started doing a lot of content for real estate companies. We worked with Uber and we worked with Airbnb. We started making maps. We started working with wonderful illustrators. We started diversifying into all these various other forms of content. And it started to make a lot of sense to us. So, yeah, I'm going through the whole trajectory of City Story. And around the time it started to make sense, and we had 6 or 8 retainers, and we were starting to do all right. The pandemic hit, and the retainers dried up, and I think we were, it's founders fatigue. We were so tired because we'd just been working at breakneck speed, trying to figure it out, pivot. Should we raise money? Should we not raise money? Should we just, fund ourselves? It was so tiring. And the pandemic was massive. It was such a massive change in all our lives. I remember having a call with Shivani and Janisha and saying, should we just put a cap on this? Should we just stop for a moment and just let's see how we all feel in a little while? They said, sure. And we just stopped the city story after 6 years. And I don't think we addressed it for a little while. And we just moved on into various other things. And so that was the curve of the city story. Wow. Should we have stopped when we did? I think we needed to do it. But those 6 years gave us, it just gave us so much insight into being what we were as a platform, into creating these really wonderful stories, into working with these creative, brilliant writers who had so much to say about their spaces and their experiences. It was really wonderful. And I was just chatting about it with both Shivani, Janisha and Bombay when I was there last month. And we have such fond memories. And we wrapped it up the best that we could. And it's in hibernation right now.
Oh.
I say that. I would like to bring out all the stories, at least on a platform for people to access. And then if anybody wants to submit more content, we'd upload that. But it's a lot of work, and I feel like I need to do it on weekends at some point. But that is the plan.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes.
Oh, I love that. I love that you said it's in hibernation and that it could potentially come back.
Yeah. I got your email, and I was searching for a writer's name. So I opened my Dropbox and I found all the stories. And it turns out that ever since we shut shop, I just haven't wanted to look at any of the stories. And I opened it, it was just like a glow. It was just so, I read some of the stories last night and this morning, and it made me so happy because I'm so proud of what we did, and I'm so proud of how we held fort and navigated everything that we had to go through. And, losing Shamal and continuing with it. Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah.
Wow. I do think there's an audience for it. Today we're a few years down the line from when you were working on it full speed, but I genuinely think, for me, for example, I love Bombay. I've discovered it very recently and didn't have family historically there, so I didn't get to grow up going there. But to me, it's so similar to London. So in a way, those two cities for me personally are very, close to my heart. And I definitely think I'd love to read it and, know more about, I don't know, just little place, fun places to go and hear stories about people. And I think there's a lot of people doing that work as well.
Yeah.
But no one will do it the way that you do it. And no one will write it the way that you will write it. And I always try and think of whatever I do as that as well.
Yes.
No one will really offer what I offer.
Every time you do something and you put it out there and it's genuine and it's coming from a place of interest.
Yes.
It is unique, and there will be an audience for it. For us, I think it's the writers that we worked with. There's this writer called Meher Mirza who is in the process of publishing her first book right now. She writes in a way that envelopes you. She writes about food predominantly, and it's unlike any food writer I've ever read. She delves into every ingredient and the sensory exploration of a certain food. It could be a vada pav, just a potato patty in between 2 slices of bread. But you want to eat that page. You want to tear it out and you want to eat it because Meher Mirza has written it. And so we worked with her extensively. And all these little Irani cafes that you have in Bombay, which are a dying breed, there's such few of them, so few of them left. So yes, it's an exploration of old Bombay, not just old Bombay. It's an exploration of a sort of there's a permanence to Bombay. Many things change in big cities like London, Bombay, New York, but there's a certain permanence that permeates it and stays there.
Yeah.
And that's quite experiential. Like that's your experience to a neighborhood and the cobbler who's been sitting there for 50 years or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's what we tried to focus on.
Yeah, I guess like heritage storytelling.
That's it.
And understanding maybe the heart of a city.
That's it. Yeah.
I love that. I hope it comes back.
Yeah, I need to scrape through some time and I figure it out. I asked Shivani if she'll. So she was the logistical, like she's in my opinion she is a machine, and she was the puppeteer. She managed all of us so well. So I'm gonna have to tie up some time with her and see if I can resurrect it in some form.
Yeah, and maybe with this new lens of motherhood and, you know, the way that you're seeing things differently, maybe.
Yeah.
And now, you know, from being on TV to writing a publication to now making soap.
Yeah.
Tell me more about where that idea came from. And also, what's the significance of Skunk in your life? Because that's kind of a lot about your online persona, isn't it?
Yeah. My mother's friend, Elaine Kochar, she is this wonderful woman who tries so many different things. I've known her since I was a little girl. She taught me how to play the piano for a year when I was in Ooty. My dad is an ex-fighter pilot, so I grew up changing schools every year.
Yeah.
I met Elaine when I was 7 or 8, and I've known her my whole life. She's done so many different things. She makes soap. I found out from my mum that she makes soap, and I was like, I'm so curious. Like, how do you make soap? I was working in television, but you know how it works is that you do some projects and then you get some time off, a few weeks. I don't know how to sit still. I cannot relax. I'm learning how to, but for the most part of my life, I just wanted to do things. You know, like life is passing you by. You have to do things. And so I asked her to teach me how to make soap. I was in my apartment in Bandra, which is a neighborhood in Bombay, which is one of my favorite neighborhoods. And I decided I'm just going to make some soap. So I started making soap with activated charcoal, which is black, and lavender soap, which is white. And I was like, oh, it's like the animal skunk, but it doesn't smell bad. Ha, ha, ha. Right? Whatever. Anyway, my friend Shamal, he had a printing press as well. He did all the branding for it, and I only made it for my friends. So it was not for retail. It was my little hobby situation going on in between shoots. And I did a bunch of it. I did a whole photo shoot, and I had a blast. And I was like, this is great fun. Absolutely no interest in doing it as work because I already had a job. And it was, I don't want to work with my hands and make soap. Like, that's so uncool. My projected image is something completely different, doing cool stuff. So I let that rest, moved to London, did City Story. But prior to this, I've been reflecting on my life. From the time I was 23, I wanted to start a brand focusing on everyday products. So it was bed sheets at one point in time, home linen, there was T-shirts, there was soap. I also wanted to work with clay beads. Like, there were all these companies that I started. I did nothing with. Like, I just registered the name. It's like, I'm going to do this. And I didn't do it because I had a job that I focused on 90% of the time. So I moved here. I did City Story. It was great. I folded City Story. And then the pandemic was ebbing. And I went through some personal loss, and I was quite shaken up with that. My daughter went back to school. Mike went back to work, and I didn't have a job. Like, I was at home, and I was really lost. And I think a few weeks into it, I realized that my brain would just eat me. So I have to do something with my hands, because I didn't want to write. I didn't want to do anything with publication. I just didn't want to do anything that I'd done before.
Yeah.
So I said, I know how to make soap. So I'll just make some soap in my kitchen, and it'll keep me going. Now, soap is all science. It's precision science. You can't mess it up. So you really have to focus. And so I spent some time working on making soap, several weeks, and then I got it right and I kept doing it and I handed it out to friends, and a friend of mine has a shop and she said, "Oh, why don't you brand it? I'll sell it for you." I was like, "Oh, no, I'm not going to make soap. This is just for fun."
It's uncool.
Yeah. This is not what I'm going to do. And so she sort of pushed me and I said, "Sure, why not?" And I spoke to a few friends in Bombay. I said, "Can you design some, can you brand this for me? These are my ideas." While that was happening, I also decided to work with concrete and just make some things out of concrete because I was like, I want to work with different material. So I branded it and she said, "I'll try to sell it for you." And she did. And so because I had nothing else to do, I said, fine, I'll reach out to people on my own. And so started my whole retail journey of like reaching out to people, seeing if they wanted it. That was a couple of years ago, and it's become a little bit more than that. I have a studio in Dalston, which I absolutely love. I make soap, I make hand balm, I make concrete homeware, but I'm also expanding to working with some organizations in India where I'm producing stuff specifically for Skunk, centered around fabric. So it's everyday goods for hardworking people, is what I like to say. So from aprons to kitchen towels to various other things that are going to be part of Skunk this year. So I'm quite excited about this next chapter. And the name remains. I didn't, when I had to brand it, I was like, I was calling it Skunk. I don't think this is going to be something. I'm just going to call it Skunk. It's just become Skunk. and I like it.
It's catchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of punk, like punk rock.
I guess. I just didn't give it much thought. I called it Skunk 13 years ago, and I'm continuing down that road, and it's expanding to so many more things, which are not black and white soap. I think the name will just stay, and I really like this aspect of my life where this part of my life where I am actually focusing on all these products that I had in my mind from the time I was in my 20s to like, I'll do this. And I am working with women-centric organizations where women from small towns, villages are taught how to do certain skills, and they're producing these brilliant pieces of fabric-centered products, and I'm able to work with them. So I'm excited about this next chapter.
Oh, I'm so excited for you, Juhi. What a journey. I feel like your trajectory has been one of the wildest trajectories I've heard on here, and like anyone I've interviewed. But it's so cool to see that you kind of push on to the next thing and you listen to what is working for you in that moment. And I think there's a lot to take out of that for anyone who might also just be feeling very confused about, whether they're in the right career or the right job. So I think it's really cool to hear that.
I think it's a privilege to be in a position where you can choose what you want to do.
Absolutely.
Every now and then. So I do recognize that. I've had parents my whole life who've just told me I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
And that's the belief that I've kept as a tentpole in my life, where it's just like, yep, I can do whatever I want. It may work, it may not work, but I should explore it. And so I have had the opportunity to work in various industries, and I recognize that it's quite a privileged position to be able to do that, and I'm really grateful for it. I also feel that not everybody is meant to do one thing for their entire...
I live by that.
There are some people who are very dogged and they're very determined about what they want to do, and there are some people who are not. I fall in the other category, and I like exploring different industries, and I'm quite happy where I am.
I love that. Okay, so last question that I ask everybody, Juhi, which I'll ask you as well, is what do you have strong game in?
I would like to say I have two that I can speak of. One is that I'm actually a really good cook. I did hotel management in college, so I did 3 years of basically culinary school, and learned everything about food production. And I enjoy cooking for people and for myself. I like a good meal at every meal. So that's one. The other is that I can break the ice with anybody. I have had a very itinerant life. I've learned how to be around various sorts of people, and I can be friends with pretty much anybody. Unless you're a fascist, then I don't want to be friends with you at all.
But that's for another episode.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Juhi, for coming on. It's been great.
It has been absolutely delightful for me to talk with you. I feel like I've overspoken a lot.
Not at all.
But I've really enjoyed myself. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Hi, me again. Just wanted to say thank you so much for listening to this episode of Brown Game Strong. I hope you enjoyed it and got something useful out of it. If you'd like to stick around, then please hit subscribe if you're listening on YouTube. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can click follow to get updated on all of the latest episodes. It helps me immensely in continuing to bring you more exciting guests and interesting stories so that we can continue to learn about all the awesome work that's happening in our community. Thank you for your support. It never goes unnoticed, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.